We have tons of time to sit at home and watch movies, and we both have been doing that. Oh boy. And we're going to dive right into what we've been watching on episode 97 of the podcast. Cue the music. Welcome, everyone, to the Entertainment Buffet podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Prosick.
And I'm your other host, Jessica Quaz.
And we had so much to talk about, to catch up on. We decided to make this 2 episodes, guys. We were going to do all TVs and movies in one episode, but we couldn't keep it to one.
We've been watching a lot.
We've been watching a lot to catch up on. So instead of trying to rush and shove it all into one mega episode, we're giving you 2. So in this episode, we're going to do that. Before we get going, Jess, I would love you to share everyone the awesome news, what's coming up soon, a new show you're involved in.
Yeah, so I have a new podcast launching March 7th. It is called Second Chance Movies. My co-host and I, we take movies that were divisive, beloved, hated, and we give them a second chance, and we see does our first opinion on the first viewing change at all or not? Were we right? Were we wrong? Were people too hard on it? Were people too nice on it? No movies really off the table. We're not just doing bad movies. So our first episode is Passengers, which is a bad movie, turns out.
It is.
It is not great. And we'll see how it holds up only 4 years after it came out. And then, we have others lined up. We're going to be doing Phantom Menace, which is always controversial in the Star Wars world. And we got some old award movies, seeing how they've held up. So again, it's called Second Chance Movies. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Second Chance Movies. And you can find us wherever you're listening to this on. We'll be on Spotify, Apple. And Second Chance Movies, March 7th is when it's starting.
Yeah, check it out. I'm not just plugging it because Jess is my friend, but also because I'm interested in the premise. And as someone who is often telling people to give something a second chance because I love it, I also need to give things a second chance. There's lots of times where I'll see one of Tarantino's movies the first time I saw it when I was younger, and I'm like, I don't know. And then seeing it again, I was like, oh, wait a minute. It just, sometimes it doesn't take the first time, or maybe you're in a bad mood. Maybe you're in a weird place. And so by giving things another chance, it can really give you perspective, good or bad.
Yeah, and also the time that it came out has a lot to do with it too, and what was going on in that time, and what our culture is like now, and how it is now. So I'm excited for it. I definitely want to get some suggestions from Brandon, and we're gonna have him on the show at some point as well. Second Chance Movies, please check it out.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about movies, whether it's stuff we haven't seen before, maybe it's stuff we have seen before and we're giving it another chance. But Jess was away for some episodes of the podcast. This is usually a segment of the podcast where we just kind of catch up what we've been watching, recommendations and such. But since she was gone for a little bit, we had so much to talk about, like we said, couldn't be contained in one episode. So now we're diving into movies, and to kick things off, we're going to talk about things in the documentary category of movies. So Jess, what docs have you been jumping into?
So I recently watched a documentary that a lot of people have been talking about, and that is Framing Britney Spears. It's on Hulu. It's presented by the New York Times. It's an hour and a half long. And it is a lot. It is it's emotional, it's heartbreaking, it's infuriating. I would say if you are a millennial, especially, you need to watch it. Whether you were or were not a fan of Britney Spears, you need to watch it, especially if you have access to Hulu. Again, it's only an hour and a half of your time, because not only do they get into like what's going on with her currently and her conservatorship and the Free Britney movement, but they really hone in on just the chaos and the misogyny and like lack of humanity was given at such a young age. And it's just disgusting because I mean, I remember some of this like coverage. I remember some of these some of these things happening. I'm sure you do too, where she shaved her head. And they get into that, like what her frame of mind was, which was like, you know, you guys, you won't leave me alone. You want me to be this way? Well, I'm not. I'm gonna fuck it. Like,
Yeah.
so they get into that, but there's some things that are like so just like dirty and disgusting that were like on television and on magazines and like totally acceptable. Like at one point they show an old clip of her being interviewed by a man, and she looks really young. Like I would guess she was somewhere between like 17 to 20. Like she's young. And he literally is like, so I want to ask you about the thing. And she's like, what? And he's like, I want to ask you about your boobs. And she's like, it's awful because
That's
she's
the
like,
thing. Ugh.
and she is like, she has a smile on her face the whole time because she can't be difficult. Otherwise
Yeah.
she's going to be a diva. So he's like, and he's basically harassing her like on live television, being like, you don't like talking about your boobs, do you? And she's like, no, not really. And he's like, does it make you uncomfortable? And she's like, I just don't like talking about it. Like, and we like, that was fine. That was
Yeah.
fine. That was perfectly acceptable. And it's just disgusting. Like the things that her and other women that were celebrities and young were going through, they weren't treated like typical human beings. They were truly treated like objects. And this wasn't that long ago. So that's why I say, like, any millennial should watch it, because if you grew up in that time and you know those things, it's a learning experience to look back on it and think like, wow, this really wasn't all that long ago that like misogyny and just straight up sexism was put out there. And what does that do to a girl's psyche? Like what does that do to someone who sees that? And you know, like it's just awful.
Yeah.
Like they're like it like it's just so many disgusting things. Like she really was treated so horrifically for just being like successful. Like that's what that was. And of course, like the way she was treated would lead to some sort of mental breakdown. I don't know what kind of person could go through what she went through and not have like a thing. And so
Yeah.
like, so real quick, just like for instance, like I'm sure a lot of us know about the umbrella incident where like she beat up a paparazzi's car with an umbrella, and it was like huge fucking news, and we all like foddered it. It was like, wow, someone's gone crazy, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
They get into that full story and what happened that led up to that, and it's fucking heartbreaking. She was having a really bad day, and these two paparazzis would not leave her alone. They were like stalking her when she was going over to Kevin Federline. That's a name we haven't talked about in a long time. When she was going over to Kevin Federline's house and trying to see her kids, and he was refusing to let her in. He wouldn't let her see the kids. And the two paparazzis are following her the whole time. So she leaves K-Fed's house. She's upset because K-Fed, remember that? Yep.
Taking me back.
She leaves his house. This is a mother who is denied seeing her children, and she's upset and just wants to see her kids. And so her and her cousin were driving. Her cousin was driving, and they pulled into like a Jiffy Lube or a gas station or something. And immediately, like she's sitting in the car, you can tell from like the videos and photos, like she's like upset, like she is hurt, like she is in a lot of pain. And this guy immediately is like going up to the car and being like, hey, I just want to ask how you're doing. You doing okay? You doing all right? How you doing? And her cousin is like, guys, please not tonight. Like, just please, like, please don't, like, don't. And these two, and they're just like, hey, like, what's up? We're just checking in. But like, how are you? And so she gets fucking furious and takes the umbrella and hits his car with it. And it was like just a hit or two. It was like I think it was like the passenger side rear view mirror or something. And they actually interviewed the guy, the paparazzi, and at one point he said it was a bad night for her, but it was a good night for me because I made a ton of money. So it's like things like that, like you don't know the full story of what people go through. So yeah, it's a heavy watch, but I do think like literally everyone who grew up in that era should watch it and learn from what we found acceptable and okay, and the way we talked about mental health, and the way we talked about women, and the way we talked about women and their mental health. It's just disgusting, and it wasn't all that long ago. This was in our lifetime. Like this was
For sure.
It's not good.
Yeah, when I heard about this, everyone's been saying how crazy this documentary is, because this isn't something like you said that this is like, oh, decades ago and we're reflecting on it. It's like, this is very, very recently. And I remember it started circulating this clip of Craig Ferguson, the one tonight late night host, who he pretty much commented not only on Britney but also like Anna Nicole Smith, and it's just like he says about like Britney, he's like, she's a baby, like she's like, and now she's a mother, like, and he pretty much says how like we're not gonna, and it's strange because in the clip he talks about, he's like, people like Trump, we should like make fun of him. And it's crazy because like this was before Trump was running for office. This was like when he was just the host of The Apprentice and just this rich asshole.
Dick.
And so he's like, well, like these people politicians, like they should be held accountable because like they're in like high power situations to where like we should be questioning the things that they do. Not condoning necessarily like, oh, we're always following people with paparazzis, but Britney Spears or like anyone from this generation, like Lindsay Lohan,
Amanda
Bynes. I'm sure Miranda Cosgrove dealt with this. I'm sure Hilary Duff dealt with it in various ways. Like anyone from those like Nickelodeon, Disney era fame, where they were kind of like on TV shows and in movies and like usually were singers as well. Miley Cyrus came from like this background as well, where they start at such a young age and they're just followed constantly, that they aren't raised normally. And then when they act out, it's like, yeah, guys, what do you prodded, like, it's like you were running experiments on a mouse and like you're just like poking this mouse and you're shining lights in it and you're like, are you gonna do something weird? And they're like, fuck, well, is that what you fucking want? Just get away from me. And like I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh my God, well, they like may have all this money and like, shouldn't they love being famous? It's like, yeah, well, when you get their kind of fame, there are stalkers, there are people maybe trying to steal their money, whether it's like their own family members,
Which is Britney's case, because basically when she was having this like understandable mental breakdown, and I don't even know if I would call it a mental breakdown, it was just like a bad time, like a really bad time, because she was going through so much. They were able to swoop in there and basically tell her like, look, if you want any sort of like custody, like in the slightest, if you ever want to see your kids, you have to sign this conservatorship. And and the idea was it was like a temporary situation, and she's been in it ever since. And they get into all like what a conservatorship is, but it's insanely messed up because she has no control over her own finances, even though she's the one bringing in the money. And she has also no control of her personal life legally. So legally, she can't drive without permission. She can't. Uh, Medical decisions have to be made for her. She can't pick out her own doctor. Like it's just crazy. Like the idea of like, because they tried to claim that it's just fucked up, man. It's just so fucked up because her dad, her own father, tried to claim that she had dementia when she was in her 20s, and that's why he could swoop in and do it. And so that's why like the Free Britney movement is so big and powerful, because a lot of her young fans who grew up with her see what it is now, for what, instead of what we saw back in the day. But even if like that's not like, you're not into, you don't care about Britney, which you should, because it's a fucked up thing, but like if that's not like what you're into, you should still watch it, just to learn something from it. Like, again, learn like what we thought was okay and acceptable and allowed to be displayed in such like a demeaning and like just pure sexism, just pure like
Yeah.
vicious shit. And yeah, like you said, like Craig Ferguson, like a clip has gone viral of him being like, just leave these young girls alone, like put your animosity towards someone else, essentially.
Yeah.
He was the only one. There was no one else being like that.
Yeah.
And
And I think like you made a good point that like especially our generation and younger generation should watch this to learn, but like I think people of all ages should watch it because they act like, oh, it's just, for example, us who like maybe condone this behavior, when it's like, no, I see, like, for example, like when you are at a cash register at a store, like a Target or a Walmart, whatever, like there's all these tabloids of like, this person's fat now and this person dumped so and so. And
mm-hmm.
like I always see like like a mom or a grandma, like someone like looking at it and like flipping through, and or just like people love gossip, people love to like, did you hear what so and so did, you know, whether it's like a celebrity or like someone they know. So like it's this
It's like a
culture.
beast, like a
Yeah, it's like a
beast.
beast that, and we're just, it's like the worst versions of all of us feeding into this. And that's why like I personally, it wasn't like, oh, me when I was younger taking a stand. I just like, I personally didn't care for like a lot of like pop culture gossip and whatnot. And so like I was just like, I don't care, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not that like, oh, I wouldn't be nervous like meeting a celebrity or anything, like, oh, they're just people. But I think at one point something clicked where I'm like, they are just like someone like us. Or like maybe I was watching probably something, a documentary like this about someone like our age, and it's just like, oh, it's just another person that this is their life. And I don't know, I just, it never clicked like that to me. But like this whole country is obsessed with that. And so like we said, there's no wonder why she and all these people do things they do,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not raised in a normal environment, and we're wondering why they're not normal, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
like
And
like
there is a
people,
lot. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like people, for example, like if they adopt or foster a dog or a cat that was like raised in like an abused situation, and like they may be scared, you know, and whatever, and it's just like, well, yeah, that's what they're coming from. You're not just gonna get like a quote unquote normal dog because you
Right.
want that. And like it just makes me disgusted, like paparazzis in general, like the whole practice of it, because it's like, who are we to all decide like what they should be doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And also they juggle with the fact that, like you said, like she's being interviewed on TV and she can't react a certain way because she doesn't want to be branded difficult.
Yeah. Like, what I said was very small things that are in this whole thing. Like, there's a lot more. There's a lot more just horrific shit. And she always, like, in these awful times would be professional and like sweet and like was never like provoking anyone or mean to anyone. She was just
Yeah.
always like a very wholesome like celebrity that for some reason people just like loved to attack. And like I think it was because she was a successful young girl and because she had influence over other young girls to inspire confidence, and people didn't like that. And I, that's just like a big picture thinking. But I think post COVID, like I think our society has moved past the need for celebrities and like their gossip and their bullshit. And hey, I love gossip. I was just talking about Real Housewives last episode. But like, there's like, I don't care who is seen walking around with who cares? There's so much bigger things to worry about. But at the time, like, yeah, it was so normalized that we could take these people that we feel like we have ownership over because we listen to their music or we watch their TV shows or their movies or whatever, and just allow to run rampant with whatever is said about them. And for her, like, there has been life-changing repercussions because of what we accepted. So yeah, I think like if you're a fan of Britney's or not, I was growing up. She was one of my first concerts. I loved her. Like, I still love Britney. She's got a special place in my heart for sure. But even if you don't feel that way, I think you still need to watch it just again to like learn. And so we can get better about conversations like this.
For sure. So it's ironic that you watched something about like a late 90s, early 2000s pop sensation, because I also watched a documentary that was wildly fascinating about a different kind of 90s pop sensation. It's a documentary on YouTube called Boy Band Con, the Lou Pearlman Story.
Oh, I'm already into this. Like there's just the title. Yeah, Loop. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
Do you know anything about this?
I know a little bit about Lou Pearlman. Yes, I do.
So
you need to send me this link as soon as we're done recording because like holy shit.
I'm surprised you haven't seen it because I'm like this is gonna be just as shit.
Yeah.
So this story is about NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. It's actually produced by Lance Bass from NSYNC.
Wow.
And there's members from both bands, also some others like 98 Degrees, because like there's a lot of boy bands. It was a kind of a boy band craze. And like even also like Spice Girls, a girl group as well. And so Lou Pearlman was this guy who was a manager for both Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And like the documentary mainly focuses on those two groups because they were the most famous too. Like there was often a like, do you like one or the other? And like I was a kid that I was like, I like both. I fucking like them both. I'm not picking sides. It's more about like
Backstreet Boys because they had those music videos, man.
I think it was more about like, all right, let's just decide which one goes in the boombox, but not necessarily, which one am I a fan of. I liked them both. I owned both their CDs, but so the story is crazy because the fact that he represented both of them, you would think is a wild conflict of interest because they're kind of each other's competition.
Right.
And one of the things that was kind of said was when he started Backstreet Boys and it started really taking off, he literally kind of said to someone like, well, I think I'm gonna like make my own competition. Like, Coke has Pepsi, like I'm gonna make my Pepsi to my Coke, but I have both of them. And so like he made NSYNC also, but then would spread rumors like, oh well, Backstreet Boys said this about you guys, and like NSYNC said this about this. So like he literally caused a feud between these two groups of children, and like teenagers, and they both were becoming huge, like with live tours and like album sales, where people were like, yeah, this was like an insane time for music sales, like with Britney. And the crazy thing is he was screwing both of them and all these bands out of money. He was like, so for example, they're like, oh, he was like our Uncle Lou, you know, he was this cool guy, you know, he would invite us over to his big house and we'd like have pool parties and birthday parties and stuff like that. Like he felt like he was family, we could trust him. And then he'd take us out to this fancy dinner, and then all of a sudden they found out that like all these things like jets and like some of the hotels for tours and these fancy dinners and stuff like that, he was making them pay for it out of like the money that they should have been earning from their albums and their tours and like all this stuff. And there's like this one scene that really stuck out to me where like I think NSYNC had just sold like like million records or something like that, like insane amount of money, and they're supposed to finally get like their first like non just like per diem like daily allowance, which they each got 10 grand, which they even said like, yeah, that seems like a lot of money, but like the millions of like touring, selling out stadiums, all these millions of albums, like there's 5 of us, we're each gonna, that's 50, that where's all the other money, you know?
Wait, so after they reached like a certain level, they only got 10 grand?
Well, that's where all of a sudden they're like, something's going on here. And
Yeah.
so like there was basically legal battles between both groups and him, because like one of the things he did was he legally, like in paperwork, had himself as like the 6th member. So like he was paying himself as a member and the manager and like a producer and like all these different things. And so the story gets wild because he isn't just a con man for like these boy bands. He's also just a fucking white collar criminal, where he basically created this fake airline for people to invest money in, and it was just a giant Ponzi scheme. And actually I think someone said it was one of the top like 5 to 10 Ponzi schemes in US history. He
What?
just had all this money. He did eventually get arrested. Yeah, sorry, I just spoiled, but like it's because there's been like 60 Minutes, there's been like various things about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a wild ride because like I grew up, like you're talking about with Britney Spears, I grew up with Backstreet Boys, with NSYNC, and you know we've seen Justin Timberlake have an insane career afterwards.
Yeah,
And the
but fuck
fact
Justin Timberlake. What? I'm sorry. What? Who said that? What? So
um
weird. Anyway.
and after all of this stuff, that like they were all being screwed out of money, and just the fact that this guy didn't just do this, also was just screwed all these people out of, you
Yeah.
know, got them to invest in this airline that it didn't exist. There was no building, like it was just a fake paper only
Oh my God.
thing.
I didn't know that part. I knew like, yeah, I knew he was corrupt as hell, but I didn't know he like had this other
Yeah, it's
literal
nuts.
scheme.
It's definitely a
Wow.
crazy documentary where they they show all about that stuff, especially the fact that like they just noticed at one point, they're like, wait, doesn't he own an airline? How come we never take his airline's planes?
Oh my
You
God.
know, and just like how did he think he could like get away with this? And like just an example of like where he started from, and then like we can move on, is he started like his first con was with like, he was a blimp salesman. So like he would sell, like for example, like, hey, Coca-Cola, you know, I have this blimp, you want to put Coca-Cola on the blimp and, you know, fly around and advertise for like this much money. Well, he would buy a really really shitty like dying blimp for like 10 grand and then insure it for like over 300 grand or something, and then of
Oh my
course it would
God.
crash, and like and then he'd make all this insurance money.
And I'm sure whoever was in that blimp might have died. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Oh
nuts.
my
It's just
God.
nuts. And I saw this movie twice in a weekend because I watched it and loved it and then told my girlfriend about it. And then like the next day or two, she watched it. And it's just, it's just crazy. And
Wow.
it's all on YouTube. It's like a YouTube original. You don't have to pay for like the premium anything. It's just on there. So it's called Boy Band Con, the Lou Pearlman Story.
Okay, can we do a viewing homework right now where I watch that and
And I
you
watched
watch
Britney.
Framing Britney Spears in the next episode? In what we've been watching, we'll talk about them.
Seriously, we've been talking for 30 minutes just on these two documentaries.
And they're connected because like you don't know the full story. Like
Yeah,
it's
nuts.
crazy. That time
There could have
period
just
was
been an entire
nuts.
documentary on just the boy band stuff, and then
Oh
an
my
entire
God, yeah.
documentary on his like fucking Ponzi scheme.
Oh my goodness. That's wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's watch, let's
We'll
assign each
report
other
back.
these and then report back because I think you would be very fascinated by Framing Britney Spears and
Oh,
I
I'm
am
sure.
I'm already so into the boy band con.
Yeah, boy band
Okay.
con, and you'll see like when you look it on YouTube, guys, that Lance Bass is the like the thumbnail because like he produced it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have members of both crews talk about it, like the legal stuff behind it. It's a wild ride.
Wow. Wow. We had such interesting documentary views. Wow.
Yeah. So two that I really enjoyed. I'll try not to take too long on these. One is also on Hulu. It's called Hail Satan? Question mark. It's about. Oh, were you gonna say?
Sorry, I was gonna say I've seen that and that's been on my watch list for a while, actually.
Yeah, it is really, really good. This documentary is about the Satanic Temple, which like a lot of people hear like, oh, a Satanist, and you think of probably like a grungy evil guy who wants
Blood
to,
sacrifice.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and really, and I'm not going to sound like I'm trying to convert anyone, but like I feel like this movie converted me just because I've never been religious myself. I was raised sort of, I like to say, loosely Lutheran, and I never really believed in general Christianity. And like this movie talks about how Satan really was like a character that would often really want good things and just really was only considered evil for questioning God. But it was always like things like, for example, someone just pointed out the tiny thing like when Jesus was like out for like 40 days and 40 nights or whatever, like Satan tempted him with food and water, and it's like, no, Satan just saw a guy hungry and was like, you should have some food, bro.
Hey
um
bud, you good?
yeah.
How dare
And
you?
like Eve's like, do you want this apple of knowledge? Like it's like, oh, snake, you're evil, why are you tempting her, she's, women are evil, you know. And it's just like, wait, so not being able to question something that feels very dictatorship, you know.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Which, and so it's not just about that, but what's really fascinating to me is they're often a group that is just trying to separate church and state.
Yeah.
They're trying to, the fact that so many like political buildings have Christian and Catholic, like, you know, related things, where they're just like, wait, what about church and state? Like, all right, if you have this thing, like they went to this one state, they're like, yeah, so you have the 10 commandments right outside your courthouse, well, we want a statue of Baphomet, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, well, how could you? And people get all butthurt, and they're kind of like trolls, but like fun trolls, because they just point out the hypocrisy of a lot of this stuff when they don't actually know anything about Satanism. When like I read their I think it's like 7 not commandments, pillars, I think what they call them. Like one of them is like, you know, understanding all forms of things such as, you know, science and like Another one is like never harming someone. You know, it's like all these things that are very peaceful and learning, and they're often fighting for women's reproductive rights.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing, you know, blood drives and teaching kids that they, you know, have other options for religion, and like all these things that it's like, none of this sounds bad, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And I was like, I think I may be a Satanist, because like all these things like I believe in. I don't know if I'll necessarily be a full-on member and whatnot, but like I believe in women's right to do what they want with their body, and I believe that we should be able to question things and all these things. So yeah, it's a fascinating documentary, a lot of fun. Makes you really think differently about when you hear like what is a Satanist, what is, you know, people say hail Satan, what that's
Mm-hmm.
all about. So I loved it so much that like I bought it on DVD because I wanted to support it, which like I don't own many documentaries. So like that's how much I enjoyed it. That, and I'll say this, it's so good that there were times where I wanted to pause because I just wanted to sit with like what was just said and just talk about it with my girlfriend and be like, wow, I didn't think about it like that. And so like we would discuss and then hit play and keep watching.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's cool. I
yeah.
I actually know a few people that were a part of the Satanic Temple. I actually went to the Satanic Temple in LA once. It was interesting. It was for like it was actually a party to celebrate the premiere of The Witch, which so the that like indie horror movie, and
Yeah.
then the Church of the Satanic Temple was just like, want to come here and party afterwards? And like everyone was really nice, really friendly, and just like dark, like cool, like aesthetic for like horror, because it was a horror movie celebration. So it was really cool. And yeah, so that's where I got to learn like what actually they stand for and what they actually like believe in. And yeah, if you, I'm sure the documentary covers it, but like the whole foundation was a lot to do with with questioning religious freedom in America, where you know, you like you said, you can like have your 10 commandments out there. Okay, well, if we're all free with our religion, then we can put like our, you know, Satan statue right here. That's the vibe we're all going for. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting because like you said, like Satanist, it just sounds like, especially with like Satanic Panic from the 70s, people think
Yeah, like they talk about
like,
that like with like Dungeons and Dragons and like
yeah.
rock and roll, like how it was just all stereotyped and like just there was like almost propaganda against it. Um yeah, it's a wild ride. It's a lot of fun, very informative, and it just makes you think differently. Um yeah, so Hail Satan question mark. It's available on Hulu. One last documentary I watched, it's called Image Revolution. It's on Amazon Prime for free if you have Amazon Prime. It's just about the creators who, they were some of the top artists in the 90s for like Marvel and DC, and basically they were being kind of screwed over, and like as like all they were at one point, like this group of like 6 7 artists, they were like 24 of the top like 26 or 25 like comic books at the time, and they decided to walk out of Marvel and DC and start their own company called Image, which they would go on to make Walking Dead and Spawn and like all these other indie comics where they're really, their main focus is creators have the rights to their properties, you know, the characters and the stories that they create, and they're paid properly for the thing, just because they're not part of like Marvel DC where they're like, oh well, we own Spider-Man and we own Batman or whatever. They're just very much for like, no, like artists should be paid properly because they're the ones that are putting out the art that's selling the books, that's continuing these properties going.
Mhm.
So it was very cool documentary about those guys walking out on the two like seemingly only comic book companies in the industry and just starting their own company.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the documentaries I watched. It looks like we gave ourselves some documentary homework already.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
excited. I'm excited to discuss them.
for sure. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into movie comedies that we've been watching. I'm just gonna kind of skim over a few that I've been watching. I watched Weekend at Bernie's, that classic.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Tron Legacy for the first time. Killer soundtrack.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Which I knew the soundtrack was good. I often would just listen to it while I write because I'd like to not have lyrics playing while I'm writing
Mm-hmm.
because it distracts me. So like I loved the soundtrack already, but finally seeing the movie, it was like cool to
Yeah,
see
with the
that
visuals, it's so good.
for sure. I also, like mentioned in episode 95 of the podcast, I watched all 8 Muppet movies. I watched The Sisters Brothers, which was very meh. I was hoping to have a fun Western or at least an entertaining one with all these great actors. It was very meh. Um, for the first,
I've never heard of that.
yeah,
Like,
it
what is
was.
that?
It's just a Western. Apparently, it was like based off some books, or like a book that was like short stories with like John C. Riley and Joaquin Phoenix. Their their last name is Sisters, so they're the Sisters
Hmm.
Brothers, and they're like kind of these outlaws and like sort of like bounty hunters in a way, and it's just kind of like various shenanigans happen to them, and it's fine, but I like if I didn't have my tracker on Letterboxd, I would have forgot that I watched
Yeah.
it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like it was just like, oh yeah, I did watch that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Can I
So,
sidebar for a second? Completely just sidebar.
sure.
So last night I actually watched the Golden Globes. Yeah,
Oh
I did that. And Joaquin Phoenix presented, I think probably Best Actor because that's what he won last year. And
yeah.
Homeboy showed up in a tie, a black hoodie, and Converse shoes on, and was just like, why like the vibe was like, why are we doing this? There's a pandemic. Okay, here you won, cool. And I was like, I just fucking respect that man so much. That's the energy I wanted this year, was like celebrities just like in like loungewear being like, this is weird, why are we acting like everything's normal, like.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Um so yeah, Sisters Brothers, it's on Hulu if you want to check it out. I also saw on Netflix Tremors 7. Well, it's called Tremors Shrieker Island, but like it's Tremors 7.
Mhm.
Um, it's the 7th movie in a franchise you didn't think would have more than one. Um, like I don't know what you're expecting from it, but it's a thing. They'll never beat the first one. I saw The Oath, which was with Tiffany Haddish
Oh
and
yeah,
Ike
I've seen
Barinholtz.
that. That was an interesting one. I actually really
Yeah,
enjoyed that.
it's like I don't know. I guess I thought it would go a different direction, but it was just very like obvious, kind of like the politics behind it. I thought it
Yeah.
had some interesting things to say, but then I'm like, I don't know if this is a whole feature movie's worth of stuff.
Okay.
It was. I guess I just thought it would go like more darkly comedic in one direction, and it just kind of like, oh, okay. I guess I saw this all in the trailer. It's just prolonged.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I watched it like right when it came out, and it was like fully in the middle of the Trump administration. So I think that's probably why I was like, yeah, I'm getting this. I get it. Like, I get it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I wonder if maybe it's a second chance movie. I wonder, yeah, if like now that things are a little different and there's a full-on pandemic and whatever, like what it would be like now in 2021. But I thought the premise is interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting premise, but I'm curious how it'll age. Like you said, like we're out of that era. But that was one I saw for the first time. And also I saw Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Which what a trip. That's like all you
Yeah.
can say about that movie. Like it's like they were like, all right, so if you've never done drugs, we'll make this movie and you'll know what it's like to do drugs.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah.
And like that's all I'll say. Like it's just that.
It's a
Um
wild ride. Yeah.
it's a wild ride. Which like I heard that like critics didn't like it or whatever when it came out, and I'm just like, well, I feel like it has a consistent tone in what it's doing.
Hmm.
You're either on board or you're not, and I don't think that's a criticism of the movie. It's just
Right.
your opinion on it.
Well, it based off a Hunter S. Thompson book, and that dude was on drugs all the time. So, like, you should know going into it that, like, yeah, it's gonna be a wild movie.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's like I feel like one of those movies that's like a cult classic, but it's for a very specific type of person to enjoy. Like, it's not
yeah,
for everyone.
for sure. I did rewatch. Lastly, I'll just say, and then we can. I want to hear some of your kind of like honorable mentions of stuff you watched. I rewatched for the first time in years Small Soldiers.
Oh, oh,
It's interesting because I didn't know the guy who directed Gremlins made it, and
oh
like
no.
I think they were originally going for a darker tone, like more horror-esque, and then like it's like DreamWorks was like, wait, so this isn't going to be like Toy Story? And they're like, no, we're doing this thing. And they're like, oh, well, can we like sort of be like Toy Story? And they're like, yeah, but we already have all these explosions. So like they're like, all right, well, we'll try to sandwich something together. With an insane cast. It's got David Cross, Dennis Leary for a bit, Phil Hartman's final movie. It's Frank Langella and Tommy Lee Jones's voices, the original Dirty Dozen cast, and like doing voices of the Commando Elite. It's insane, and I'm like, I think that's a movie that deserves like a rewatch because it's
Yeah.
weird to look at it like growing up in the 90s seeing it, and now like there's actually a lot of messages in that movie. There's a message about like consumerism and also the desensitizing children playing with military toys, whether it's like GI Joes and like guns and whatever. It's like, we're all gonna shoot each other and we're all going on missions and GI Joe and all this stuff. And like they
Hmm.
kind of like comment on like, should we maybe not do that with kids? And like I'm not saying the whole like, oh, they can't play certain video games because otherwise they'll do these certain violent things, but like
Mm.
actual military related things
Yeah.
maybe a little bit much.
Interesting. Yeah.
But those are some just that I didn't want to go in depth on, but some movies that I've been watching in like kind of like the comedy, dark comedy territory.
So, I really only have two comedies that I've watched recently, both of which are unique comedies, and award comedies. The first one is Soul, the latest Pixar movie. Uh,
Okay.
Calling it a comedy is like it's not a straight up comedy, but it's very heartfelt. Of course, it's Pixar. It's a beautiful film. It's sweet. I cried. My boyfriend cried. It's just like one of those like oh like it's just like a nice feeling. It's a good movie to watch now, like in this time, in this space, in quarantine and pandemic, because a lot of it is about like how you live your life and what satisfies you and your passions and stuff like that. So it's not a straight up comedy, although I did like laugh out loud a few times. But it's more just like heartwarming and just nice. It's just nice and it's good. I'm so happy like it's getting recognition. It's just a very sweet movie. Even though it is Pixar, I don't think it's like a kids movie. It's dealing with like life and death and very heavy subjects, but it's beautiful.
For sure.
And then I finally watched Palm Springs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that. It's, you know, it's a plot point we've seen before, you know, reliving the same day, whether we've seen it in, you know, Groundhog's Day or dramas or whatever, sci-fis. But it was like an interesting, cute take. I don't want to say cute. That makes it sound like, oh, you tried, cute. Um, good job. It was an interesting and like unique and kind of fresh take on that angle, and it was just fun. It was just a really fun movie, and it had heart to it as well, and it had J.K. Simmons in it, so like hello. Anything that man's in is great.
Yeah.
Even his commercial work is amazing. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad, even though really like awards don't matter, even though I watched them, I'm glad that it was up for some awards for best comedy, because I think it was a special movie that came out. So yeah, that was one that I really enjoyed, and both made me laugh and both made me feel nice. So I would suggest those two, definitely.
Nice. Yeah, which I realized I was like, actually, some of the things I said weren't quite comedies, but they were ones that I'm like, some of these were funny, some of these were this. But yeah, Palm Springs, I saw this last summer and I really enjoyed. I was a little iffy when I saw like the trailer because I was like, oh, Groundhog's Day, but it's like a
Mm-hmm.
rom-com, but like they
Right.
still made it fun. Uh,
Yeah.
and those actors, Andy Samberg and I can't remember her name.
Christina Maloney, I think.
Yeah, they did
Milani.
have chemistry, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, if you're gonna do that premise again, at least you did bring some new things to it.
Yeah. And yeah, I wouldn't even like necessarily call it a rom-com, because I think it's more just like uh I don't know, like yeah, there's like I don't know, the romance is not that strong in it, and not in a bad way. Like
Yeah,
there's just
they
like
both have arcs.
they both have arcs, yeah, and it's just funny and it's sweet, and it's also like, can you spend like can you find someone that you would be able to spend every single day with? Like, which, you know.
Yeah,
And again, J.K. Simmons is like a really fun little supporting character, and yeah, it's just all fun. Like it's just all fun and silly, and also, like I said, has soul and heart to it, so I really liked it.
for sure. Um, One I'll comment on that it's not a comedy per se, but I kind of laughed because it was bad. Um, I saw Pirates 5, Dead Men Tell
Oh.
No Tales,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because I love the first Pirates movie,
Of course,
and
yeah.
I'm a big Pirates fan. I did make a Pirates comic book because I love that genre. And I knew that like these movies have kind of gotten worse over the years, but like some people made it seem like, oh well, they did some interesting things with 5. No, they did not. Like they just straight up did not. And I'm sorry, but like it's just a bad movie. I
Wow,
think
okay.
I think that like, so you know how in like the first Pirates there's like fun like kind of like Jack Sparrow escaping like the British, police will say, and it's just like dun 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 dun, it's an adventure and it's fun. It's like they kept trying to capture those moments by just like repeating certain things, but there was like this part where like he's on the run, but then he gets caught, and then like this girl is a new female lead, and she's on the run, but then she's caught, and then pretty much the new Orlando Bloom character, which is Orlando Bloom's like son, not actor, like Will
Yeah,
Turner's
yeah.
character, and like same thing, and I'm like, no joke, I like clocked it at like about like 50 minutes in. Like there was so many chases and catches and chases and catches with like these 3 characters. I was like, can the movie just fucking start? Like we're 50 minutes in, guys. Like none of these action sequences were like, oh wow, that was worth it. It was like you did the same thing 3 different times, and you're running out of time, like you're you're already halfway in. So I really, really hope that they're done with Jack Sparrow. Let's let this Pirates franchise die, and then let's do a new Pirates franchise, which I've heard there's talks of like various. I think I heard there's one with like Margot Robbie possibly, and I think like a writer that or director she may have worked with on the Harley Quinn movie, I think. So like there's talks of different versions. I heard of one happening with Karen Gillan. So I just hope the Pirates franchise gets away from the people from the original movies. Like, let's just move forward, tell a new story, because like I'm sick of Johnny Depp. I'm sick of
Yeah.
Jack Sparrow. Like the first one came out in 2003.
Mm-hmm. And what was it, 2015 when this fifth one came out?
I think like 2017 or something. It's like, Jesus
Oh, yeah.
Christ, guys.
Wow. I saw the fifth one. I haven't watched the fourth one because like no. But I remember I saw the fifth one like I not in theaters, but shortly when it was on like some sort of streaming something. And I because I think it was like nostalgia truly that I was like, oh, I like this. Like I like the first one so much. And you have Keira Knightley come back and Orlando Bloom come back, even though it's like for a millisecond.
Yeah, the two cameos, really.
Yeah, really. Yeah. But it was still like, oh, it's a full circle. So but yeah, I bet now I wouldn't think that it was too cute or good.
Yeah,
But
and they did the one thing that I can't stand in writing, which is I hate when movies need to find an excuse for two characters to be related. And like so often they're like long lost whatevers. And there's a
mhm.
character that they introduce in this movie, and then a character we've seen a billion times in the franchise, and they're like, you know what? That's his kid.
Mhm.
He didn't know he had a kid. He figured it out somehow.
Mhm.
And like, just because. And I'm like, why did we need that? Why couldn't this person just be a new character? But God forbid,
Yeah.
they need to be related for some reason. So yeah, that was just like so laughable because I'm like, man, they're these writers and this director, they thought this would work.
Are you talking about like Will Turner's son?
No,
Okay.
like that was like, okay, that's his story, is like he wants to save
Yeah,
his dad,
I thought that
but
was
no,
sweet.
Barbossa's daughter. They said that the girl that Will Turner, his son or whatever, I can't remember his name, the son,
Yeah,
and then was into that girl
that
who was like,
girl.
she's Barbossa's daughter, Jeffrey Rush's character.
Oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, you figured it out. They randomly like he figures it out and says it to like Jack, and then all of a sudden like he sacrifices himself for them, and like Barbossa dies, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about Barbossa. He
Yeah, we're
died.
not
Like,
here for him.
yeah.
Interesting. I know I forgot about that plot point like completely. So
Yeah, exactly, because it's just so stupid, and it just woof. Talk about a franchise, and like with a lot of franchises that go too long, that was like so good, and then like I'll admit with 2 and 3 they tried some things. It was a little weird, and like, it wasn't awful, and then it just got bad. And also Jack Sparrow like really could be like almost removed from the movie. Like he's like just a cartoon character at this point. And
yeah.
I just like was so upset because I'm like, this is the only type of like pirates media out there besides like Black Sails and then like maybe some video games. And it's like, this is what we're getting. This is what we're doing, guys.
Yeah.
Like, please let someone else write this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the first one I loved, a lot of people did. I think the first one's still probably the best.
For
And
sure.
then 2 gets a little wild, and then 3 is like kind of dark and like really long. Like I actually watched the first
Really
3
long.
like so long. Like, oh my God. Like I watched the first 3 like a year ago actually. I was like really sick, not with COVID. We have other diseases still. It's really weird. But yeah, I was like really sick. I had a really bad And so I just watched all three of them when I was just laying down. And the third one, I was like it's so dark. Like it's like heavy. I don't like the ending where Will is like, all right, I'm gonna go on this magical boat and be a creature. I'll see you in 10 years, my love. Like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
this is a family movie. And it's like, it is just so long. And I don't remember a lot of what happens. I just remember it's just a lot.
Yeah.
Just a lot.
Yeah. So I put this in the comedy category of our talk just because I'm like, it's just like laughably bad. I don't know if it's like one of those so bad it's like good or anything like that.
Yeah,
It's
probably not.
just, if you got Disney Plus and you really are curious like I was, like, sure, you can give it a shot. But like I warned you, my friend warned me. I should have listened, Josh. I'm sorry. But yeah, so yeah, those were a lot of the comedy movies I saw. And did you see back around Christmas, Happiest Season?
Oh yeah, I did. I liked it a lot. I really
Yeah,
did.
I liked it. I think there's a lot of people on the internet who hated it for, I think being like a quote unquote another come out story. But like I personally think that it's okay if we have like some of those now, but if like, all right, we had it, I think it was done pretty well. It was fun. It was a cutesy movie around the holidays, but like now let's do some more representation. I may be biased because I loved Aubrey Plaza and I loved Dan Levy in it,
Yeah. Yeah, the whole cast is wonderful. They're all really funny. I liked it a lot because one, it's just sweet and it's funny. But two, I love a good Hallmark Christmas cheesy moment. Like I love that like just cheap ass Christmas movie vibe. That's all for me. But it's incredibly heteronormative. Like just Christmas movies in general are very, 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 very straight. Very. So yeah, I mean, it was like and I'm a straight girl saying this, so like, what the fuck do I know? So I could see the argument of like, okay, it's just another coming out movie, but at the same time, it's way more than that. Like, it's a Christmas movie that the centers around a lesbian relationship, and we don't get that like ever. Hallmark doesn't have the guts to do that.
Yeah.
Lifetime did do a gay Christmas movie this year, and it was cute. I watched it, but like, it was just nice. Like I don't know, and it was like nice to see it be kind of mainstream too. A lot of people watched it and enjoyed it. So yeah, I did like that. I thought it was sweet.
For sure. But were there any other comedies you had, No?
No.
Okay. Let's go ahead and jump on into some like dramas.
Yeah, so for some reason I watched Basic Instinct for the first time.
For some reason.
For some I don't
I
know
tripped
why.
and it was on and like I just
Like it was just one of those nights where I was like, I just want to watch something. I want to watch something. I don't know what, but like I want to watch something. And Basic Instinct is one of those movies. It was from the 90s, and it's like it's referenced in pop culture like a lot.
Yeah.
And so like I've heard of the movie. I know a little bit of like pieces of it. So I was like, I'll finally give this movie a shot. And it is weird as hell. It is weird as hell. Like
I bet.
it's so strange. Like basically Sharon Stone like may or may not have murdered someone.
She may cross her legs. That's all I know
yeah,
about it.
She may like and then Michael Douglas, who like, I'm sorry, like he's just always slimy. Like he's just always like ugh, I don't know. He's just a squirm, like slimy guy. You know what I mean? Like any role he's in, he could be playing like like just a dad trying to be a dad, and I'm still like, ugh, gross. Like, go, I don't like this. He's like, just ugh. He's like really, really sexually attracted to Sharon Stone, even though she might be a murderer, and he's the detective on the case. So it's really weird. It's really weird. I can see why it was like iconic for the time, because it's like sexual thriller in the 90s. But it's just was like, it was wild. It was a wild time. I don't think I recommend it. Like, it's weird. His character sucks. Like, and is just like, dude, come on. She's great. She's fun. She's a lot of fun in it. But like, he is just, I don't like him. And then for my horror fans out there who might feel deprived of horror, because we really haven't had much horror released this year, Blumhouse has partnered with Amazon Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime, they released 4 kind of like shorter side horror movies, like hour and a half. They're all really good. All 4 of them were really, really good and very different. The ones that I liked the most was The Secret and Black Box. So yeah, if you need some horror in your life, go check the 4 from Blumhouse out, because they were really, really well done, and just really interesting. And I mean, it's the only like new horror that I can think of, because we didn't get much this year. So yeah,
Cool.
there's that.
There's that.
There's that.
So some that I'll just kind of briefly skim over. I watched Ford v Ferrari.
Oh. Why? Why did you do that?
Because James Mangold directed it.
Okay.
He's the guy who directed 310 to Yuma and Logan and Walk the Line. So like, he has some good movies. It's fine. It's a perfectly fine movie. Yeah, my family enjoyed it. It's got Christian Bale and Matt Damon. Some cool sequences, but it's fine. You know, it's not worth buying, at least in my eyes. It was one of those they have on demand with their cable, and we found it for free. So
Yeah.
I watched. I had gotten it cheap at like a movie store that was kind of going out of business. The movie Fury. It's the war movie with Brad Pitt and John Bernthal and Shia LaBeouf, Michael Pena, where they're like in this tank during World War II. Yeah, very brutal movie. I'll just say that. Very, very brutal. And it really just depends if you like war stories. It went some places that I'm like, okay, that's probably a bit much, but also it's a lot. It's very heavy. Very, 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 very heavy. Had to watch something fun after that one. I watched for the first time Lost in Translation with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, it's good, but I think we, as 2 film majors, there's certain movies that fellow film majors cannot shut up about.
Yeah.
And this is one of them.
Yeah.
I had some friends who, when we went to Columbia College in Chicago, that like, God, they act like this is like the best thing ever. And it's fine. It's just fine. I think the performances, are good. I think it's like a unique story, but it's just, I guess I probably went into it with the wrong expectations, and that's unfortunately that's happened to me before, like with Blade Runner. People like talked it up, and then when I saw it, I'm like, that's what you're going on about.
Yeah. Luckily, I saw Blade Runner before we got to film school. So, because I enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this is dope. And then everyone in film school was like, Blade Runner. And so, yeah, if I had seen Blade Runner after all that, I would have not liked it. But
the pros and cons of going to film school.
Yeah.
And then one movie that I saw for the second time only, I bought it. I hadn't seen it since theaters, though. Jess and I were talking about it the other day, which is Us.
Oh, so good.
So good. I could go on and on about this. So like, I won't, because, we got other movies to talk about, but like, woof. I think if you liked Get Out, you'll like Us. It's a totally
Absolutely.
different story, but it's got the same things. Great story, great performances, incredible direction. I think it's something that got underlooked because it's like people were wanting Get Out again or something, and it just Us came out, and I don't know if something else came out around that time and people were just distracted or what, and then it just kind of came and went, and I'm like, guys, I think this is going to be like an iconic horror movie someday.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't try to just do jump scares, like it tries to just be weird and like freak you out, and it's an original story that tons of twists. I really
Yeah.
liked it. Ooh, I just got chills.
So that was a movie, I think I said in the last episode, I saw it like 3 times in one weekend in the theaters because I loved it. And I didn't get why other people weren't loving it. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't
you dressed up
understand.
as some characters for
Yes,
Halloween.
yes. My boyfriend and I, not this past Halloween because, COVID, but the time before, we dressed up as tethered versions of ourselves, which is like the red jumpsuit. We had like plastic gold scissors and like the one glove. And I did his makeup and my makeup to look like we were living in like a tunnel. And we had so much fun. Like, we were like, we look sick. This is dope. No one knew who the fuck we were. I was so pissed.
Are you
Only
guys janitors
Yeah, they're
or?
like, what I'm sorry, what are you? And I'd be like, have you seen Us? And they're like, what? And I'm like, have you seen Get Out? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, the second movie by the guy that did Get Out, Us. And oh yeah, I saw that trailer. There was only one very drunk girl that came up to us and was like, oh my god, I love you, this is great. But the rest of the night people were like, what are you supposed to be? And like,
What a
it
shame.
came out that same fucking year, guys. Like,
Yeah,
oh, but yeah, I think that's a one where, like, if you haven't seen it, see it. If you're a horror fan, see it. I don't get why it didn't like stick like Get Out did, because I think it's up to that quality for sure.
for sure. And then one other one that was uh considered a classic and controversially did not win Best Picture. Brokeback Mountain I saw for the first time.
Okay. I have not
Yeah.
seen that yet, actually.
Yeah, it's I watched it on Peacock. Um which, because it's free, and I was like, oh, okay, we'll watch that. Um Great performances, like you would have guessed. Beautiful locations, and I think it just like I was especially interested in it because I did visit Montana this last year to do some like just social distant vacation and hiking in the mountains and stuff. So certain scenes for that, I just like it brought me back to like being out in the middle of nowhere and like not worrying about crowds and not worrying about having to wear a mask because I'm just like out on my own. And so yeah, I think it's worth seeing. And I guess I do understand why people would have preferred that to win Best Picture over Crash.
Yeah. I mean, Crash is Crash. Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, um
So speaking of awards, I recently watched a couple. I already talked about Soul and Palm Springs that are like comedy awards, but I've also watched some drama award movies. So I watched Judas and the Black Messiah. It's on HBO now. And holy shit, like Daniel Kaluuya, speaking of Get Out earlier, he just needs to be in every movie. Like, he's just wonderful, wonderful. Like, he's so dynamic in everything he does. Like, just great. And Lakeith Stanfield is opposite him, his like supporting role, and he is just so wonderful as well. The story itself is fascinating and one that is really not well known. It's about how the FBI essentially murdered Fred Hampton, who was a civil rights leader. and how they used a black man as their informant because he uh, basically he got caught for a crime, and they said, look, you don't have to go to jail if you infiltrate Fred Hampton's group and get us info. And so it's a very fascinating story. But just for those two guys' performances alone, I would say absolutely watch it. Like, they are just wonderful, and everything they do, they are just wonderful. Like, so especially Daniel Kaluuya, I think he's amazing. And Lakeith Stanfield, I feel like people need to start watching his shit more because he's just always like so different. Like in this, he's so dynamic because he's playing like someone who's like so scared and nervous but has to act like really chill and cool the whole time. And it's just actually reminds me of Daniel Kaluuya's performance in Get Out, where he's essentially doing that very layered thing. But yeah, that was just a wonderful, wonderful film because of those two performances and because of this really powerful story that I knew very little about. And then the other dramatic awards movie I watched was Promising Young Woman. And holy shit, you guys, this is so fucking good. It's so powerful and controversial in a way that's good, I think, because it's dealing with some really hard things. It's dealing with female rage. It's dealing with how do you find peace within yourself? How do you get to a level of acceptance for certain things when certain things are just unacceptable? Oh, it's so good. God, and Carey Mulligan is so wonderful. We're so used to seeing her in like period pieces, so it's really cool to watch her just as a modern day woman, and what she gives in this movie is just like all over the place in the best way possible.
Yeah, I've heard good things.
It's really good. The ending has it's just, the ending is not where you think it would go, and I know a lot of people were really mad at the ending. I personally thought it was a wonderful ending and understandable. That's all I'll say about that. But yeah, you know, it was Emerald Farrell, who's been in a few like she's British, so she's been in some British things. She actually plays Camilla Parker on The Crown. She wrote and directed it. It was her first time directing, and just like the style of the movie is beautiful, like the color choices, the locations, what she was able to get out of the cast. It's dramatic but also has funny moments, so there's a lot of comedic men that are in it, which is interesting to see because it kind of uses these like likable guys as actually heinous men, showing that it's like not, you know, it can be a nice guy that's also a total creep and awful. So yeah, I just can't say enough things about this movie. As of right now, it's my favorite movie of the year. I just was blown away by it. And then next up on my list, I want to see Minari. I hear that's amazing. And I want to see the Billie Holiday movie. I think it's the United States versus Billie Holiday, so I'll be watching those soon. And then I just want to give a shout out to an indie movie I watched on Netflix called Rust Creek. It came out this year. It was, I think, written and directed by a woman named Jen McGowan. I wasn't familiar with any of her work. This cast of characters I wasn't familiar with at all. I didn't know anyone that was in it. And it was just really neat to see this like very indie movie that was compelling. It's sort of like a survivalist thriller. It's really good. So I get kind of annoyed when people are like, we didn't get any movies this year. And we actually did. We actually got a lot of really good movies this year.
Yeah.
Y'all just ain't looking for them. And that's one that I wish got more attention Again, it's called Rest Creek. Just a really well done independent thriller with a female protagonist and a female film director, and just again just was like so captivating. And that wasn't up for any awards or anything, unfortunately, but like, yeah, like I said, like the actually 2020, like there were great movies. They're out there, just you gotta find
Yeah.
them for sure.
Yeah, and a few movies I just wanted to mention that some of these were given some awards and a couple of these were not. But look, if you really think you can't find good movies, like you said, like there's some that are still coming out and just some that came out within the last year or two, like
Mm-hmm.
recent, really good movies. So one of which was one of Justice's did that. One of your favorites recently, Hustlers.
Oh,
I saw Hustlers twice now because I loved it the first time and then showed it to my girlfriend because it is so good. This
it's
should
so
have
good.
been nominated for Best Picture, should have been nominated for Best Director, should have been nominated for J-Law,
J
or
Lo,
J-Lo.
get it right. J Law could never do what J Lo does. Okay.
Yeah, the movie is just a story that's so relevant to people who lived through, the financial crisis and how it affected people. And the performances are great. The story is great. It's based on a true story. I think the director just did an amazing job getting these performances out of people, but also yeah, it just the movie flows so well. It feels like I feel like so often I see movies that I'm like wanting more or they need to cut stuff, but like this movie just felt like balanced perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Like it had everything you wanted. So good. Uh Another movie that I really enjoyed, it did get some awards recognition, was Jojo Rabbit. Saw
Mm-hmm.
that. It was on
Yeah.
HBO Max when I did have it for a little bit. So good. So good. Taika Waititi is one of our best filmmakers going right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah.
The reason I put this under drama and not comedy was just because it's covering very heavy subject with
Right.
Nazis, and it's a movie that gets emotional, but it's also very funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if there's someone that could balance that, it's I don't know how he does it. Like one scene
Mm-hmm.
you're cracking up and then another scene you're crying. That's very difficult to do. Some people can't make people laugh or make people cry, but he's like, I'll just do both.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, he's very special. Like he's really good at comedy and he's really good at thought-provoking material as well.
for sure. And yes, he is the guy who did Thor Ragnarok. See his other movies like Jojo Rabbit, see Hunt for the Wilder People,
Yeah.
see oh, I still need to see What We Do in the Shadows, but I've heard nothing but good things about
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
funny.
so yeah, loved those. Wish they got more recognition than where they were, because like JoJo was like it got like best adapted screenplay, but like I don't know. That's a movie I'm going to be thinking about, and like I want to buy. Hustlers I already bought because I was like, this is
Hell
going to be
yeah.
great. Um, Lastly, a movie I want to mention. I saw Raid 2, which
Mm.
is an action movie. I saw the first Raid movie a while ago. Like, if you're a fan of like the John Wick movies, like you can see the movies that take heavy inspiration, and some of those actors were in the John Wick movies.
Hmm.
Like, just so good. Um, you guys can get over the dubs or get over the subtitles. Like, the action is ridiculous. It
Yeah.
just puts like American action movies to shame.
Yeah. So I saw Raid 1 a few years ago and was like, this shit is dope. Like, oh
Right?
my God. So does 2 hold? I haven't seen 2 yet. Does 2 hold up to that level as well?
So what I'll say, I think it holds up to that level as far as like the action goes. Like the story is definitely different because the first one is like the cops are raiding like this safe house, if you will, or whatever, with criminals, and it's all like the same day, and it's very specific to like the situation. Raid 2 is a little bit more in depth. It's more of like a traditional cop story, but the action is fucking bananas, like I don't know what, like just like how with like the John Wick movies, like he just kept topping Keanu Reeves and the director kept topping themselves, like same for this director who did both these movies. And that's why I think they're not going to do a Raid 3, if you will, because they're just like, all right, we topped the first one.
We did it.
We don't know how we're going to do this again. I'm
Mhm.
curious what that director will do next, but wow, it's just it has great performances, and even like just like watching the actors, because like I got a Blu-ray that had like the dubs, so like sometimes that throws you off when there's dubbing,
Mhm.
but like just seeing all the things that they do and the performances that some of them give, it's I just want people to watch the Raid movies and like the John Wick movies. Like, don't watch The Rock and Vin Diesel and all these fucking Fast and Furious, Hobbs Shaw garbage movies, people. Like, unless you're just getting high and laughing at them, but if you're like actually watching them, like, this is going to be good action. It's like, no, 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 no. No, no, no.
No. Get out of America and find your action elsewhere,
Right? And and I almost forgot. I saw the first 3 Police Story movies with Jackie Chan.
Mm.
The another one, great action, just like Raid and Raid 2. Like you said, get out of America. Watch some from other countries, whether it's China or Indonesia. I think the Raid movies are from. People are just kicking our ass with action, and
Mhm.
these are examples. I think like this main guy who was in both Raid movies, it's like, how is he not like the next Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan famous person? Because he crushes it in these. So
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to watch that one too. God damn, I have so much I've watched,
god
so much
damn,
to watch. Oh my god.
right? But yeah, that's what I've been watching, Jess.
Yeah, I think I covered pretty much all that I've been watching. I mean, it's been a lot, so I'm sure I missed like a couple things here and there, but like these are the ones that stood out. And yeah, in terms, I mean, just all the movies I mentioned besides Basic Instinct. Again, I don't know why I watched that. I recommend. I think they're all really great. So yeah, no, if you're like, we didn't get any good movies. Like, there's good movies literally like at your
Yeah.
fingertips. Find them,
Yeah.
they're there.
And
Pay some money, support some of these smaller movies. If you have to rent it on Amazon, like, do it. Because yeah, I think that we've just really have gotten a lot of good content in a year where, like, we don't we I mean, you know how the year went. Like, I don't
I
need
don't
to
need to
tell you.
tell you.
Yeah, so so that's what I watched, and I'm very excited to watch the boy band con, and I'm very excited for you to watch Framing Britney Spears, and I'm very excited to talk about it. So if you're listening, you guys should watch both and hear us talk about it in the next segment of what we've been watching on the next episode.
For sure. But yeah, Jess, where can they find you on the social medias?
On Instagram and Twitter, I am at Jess Quaz, JessKwazz, and you can also follow my new podcast again. Just a reminder, Second Chance Movies, and that is on Twitter and Instagram.
And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon Prosek, and follow Entertainment Buffet on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the things. And we have some more episodes coming for you shortly as we approach our 100th episode. Woo!
Wow.
But until then, let us know, what have you guys been watching? We'd love to hear, get even more suggestions to add to our list.